What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our college football playoff rankings, week 10. And as always, I have Ty joining me here, our college football and basketball analyst. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Gets to 200, where we'll be doing that autograph item giveaway. But we will first start off with the two teams that dropped from the rankings, Cincinnati and Kentucky. Two tough losses for both these teams. Kentucky, that one was kind of coming. Everyone saw that one. And Cincinnati was a toss-up game. But those teams are in our others receiving votes as well. And I'll let you take this one, Ty. Which team, could possibly get back into the rankings or could obviously fall out of this category as well?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious answer's got to be Notre Dame with Clemson coming into town this Saturday. So they have the most immediate chance to get back in. They've just been super inconsistent. They get a big win and then they get a terrible loss. So I don't know what to think about them. And I would say Texas is definitely going to be ranked by the end of the year.
And I'll let you start here at 25.
Yeah, we got Syracuse, who was 6-0, looking really good. Then they competed with Clemson, which led us both to pick them this week against Notre Dame. And the defense just caved in, let Notre Dame have a field day on them. Garrett Schrader goes down with an injury, so that's something to keep an eye on for Syracuse going forward. Because now they have a tough matchup at Pittsburgh, a team who's been finding its stride. So it doesn't get any easier for them. And they got to get things fixed or they're going to be in a downward spiral here.
At 24, we got the Oregon State Beavers making an appearance after, a 6-2 start to their first appearance here. And they are, yes, a Pac-12 team that is getting ranked. And the Pac-12 is getting some love this year, as almost half the conference has been in our rankings. But this team is kind of going down to the end of the year. They win all their games. They got a match with Oregon at the end of the year. And we'll see really what this team is made of if they can, get to that point, going at least 9-2.
All right, 23, we got UCF coming off a really bad loss to East Carolina. Now they get a big win over Cincinnati, and I would say now they have to be the favorite in the American. I know Tulane's up there, but I think UCF is the most talented team in that conference right now, and they should win it unless they have a terrible performance again, like they had already once this year. But their offense looks really good. Gus Malzahn proving that he's still a really good coach, and Auburn probably shouldn't not have let him go after what's transpiring there. So he's going to keep proving his doubters wrong, and I look for UCF to keep winning.
At 22, we got Liberty moving up after a bye. Just a lot of teams falling, and pretty much this is their toughest game since they've lost to Wake Forest at the beginning of the year. And if they go into Wake Forest, get that win, team could probably almost be in the top 10 just because of that. But they're not, and here they are going into Arkansas. Much needed win, obviously, for both of these schools. And I think they can do it. Just it's a matter of if Jonathan Bennett, their quarterback, can limit his turnovers. And if he does that, then don't be too surprised if the Flames come out on top.
All right, Wake Forest drops 10 spots after just a terrible performance. I mean, 8 turnovers, there's no nice way to put it. 8 sacks given up, just completely laid an egg at Louisville, a game that I picked them to lose, but I never would have saw them just completely getting dominated the way they did. And, I think this team still has a chance to have a 9-10 win season. I think they're much better than that performance. Obviously, when you have 8 turnovers, you're not playing anywhere near your best game. So I think there is still room for hope for this team, but they're pretty much done in the ACC race. But, with Sam Hartman at quarterback, they could still salvage a decent season.
And at 20, we got Tulane moving up after their bye week. And so they're the only undefeated team left in the American. So obviously right now they are in a prime position to go to that championship game. This defense has been excellent this year. They're going on the road to play Tulsa. And, it's all coming down to Michael Pratt. If he can, get through the regular season, lead this team to possibly an 11-1 record and undefeated conference record. But it's going to come at the cost of playing the three hardest teams, I think, in the conference left. So, they've had a very easy road to the 7-1 path, but we'll see what they're made of here in the next few weeks.
All right, NC State up 1 spot to number 19. They look terrible through 3 quarters. I mean, down 21-3 to a Virginia Tech team who's won 2 games this year on their home field, but obviously they look really good in the fourth, outscoring Virginia Tech 19-0 to get a comeback win and really save their season because if they lose that game, it's, a 7-8 win ceiling for this team. So now all of a sudden they're 6-2 with Wake Forest coming in. and a chance for a big win to get to 7-2. So things are looking up for NC State. They just have to limit the turnovers on offense, and they got to move the ball for more than one quarter in the game,
Mhm.
or they're not going to be able to keep up with Wake Forest.
18, we got Oklahoma State. Steam cost me some money this weekend, and they cost themselves a chance pretty much at almost any big game at the end of the year. Spencer Sanders just did not show up. And, when he does not show up, then this whole team obviously does not show up. So nothing to be said here except can they get back on track to Kansas, who has absolutely fallen off the map. That Kansas team was 5-0 going into playing TCU, and then haven't heard of anything since. So two teams that kind of need a redeeming win.
All right, we got Penn State dropping to number 17. I just think they lost this game because they were poorly coached. I mean, they were right there until the very end of the game. They ran the ball really well when they actually ran it, and then they would try and throw it, and Sean Clifford was throwing interceptions. So I just don't understand what the game plan was for this team. Obviously, I'm a Michigan fan, so I was pulling for them. Little bias there, but I think this team deserves a little better than the head coach they have right now because they have a lot of talent on that roster. Parker Washington is a first or second round NFL wide receiver. Sean Clifford has just completely regressed from his freshman year to now. He's just a completely different player, which is unfortunate for them because this could be a 7-1, maybe even 8-0 team if they played up to their true potential. But unfortunate that they're 6-2, but an easy game against Indiana, and I think they should finish 10-2 in the regular season. They have an easy finish.
16, we got North Carolina making a huge jump up here, 8 spots, and this is just due to the fact that they keep winning and proving people wrong. They were only favored by 3 points coming in this game, really dominated Pittsburgh throughout. And Drake May is, slowly getting himself into that Heisman race. I'm not saying, he's one of the favorites right now, but if they keep winning, pull off some big games late, he could be in that conversation and be invited to the award show. So they just got to keep it going here and possibly get into a matchup in the ACC championship against Clemson.
All right, LSU just keeps moving up. Now they're at number 15. This team looked like they were almost packing it in for the season a couple weeks ago. They get a big win over Ole Miss and a blowout, a big win at Florida. And this team all of a sudden is looking like they have a chance to maybe upset Alabama at home. I would have thought that's a blowout 3 weeks ago, but right now, I think LSU could definitely at least compete in that game. But they need Jaden Daniels to have a consistent performance where he's not turning the ball over. And if they can get that, I think they have a real shot at pulling that upset. Alabama's not quite the Alabama that we usually see, where they're just a dominant force. So who knows? I mean, LSU, I think this is all you could have asked for in the first year of the Brian Kelly era.
14, we got Utah moving up after a close victory against Washington State last Thursday. Backup quarterback Bryson Barnes stepped in and pretty much kept this team's Pac-12 title hopes alive. They've won 12 straight home games, so if you're going into this one against Arizona, more than likely they're going to get this one done. But this is a very intriguing team. With 6-2 record, people are counting them out kind of from a possible, Rose Bowl game, and this team could still do that if they win out, run the table. So don't be too surprised if the Utes, contend late.
All right, at number 13, we got Illinois, the surprise team of the year. And I think I said it last week, but Brett Bielema, I think, should be the national coach of the year, the way this team is playing. I mean, I guess Josh Heupel from Tennessee is going to have an argument, but with the expectations for Illinois and what they're doing right now, it's crazy, honestly. I mean, they got a competent quarterback, which they've never really had, in Tommy DeVito. But the real story is Chase Brown. They just feed this guy. This week he had 30 carries. The previous week he had 40 carries. So they know they have a dominant running back, and they just continue to give him the ball as they should, and that's why they keep winning. This team's 7-1 with a really good defense, and now they get Michigan State with all kinds of issues going on with that program right now. So they should get to 8-1, and I don't see how they don't win the Big Ten West.
And then at 12, we got Ole Miss after a close victory at Texas A&M. I had them getting upset. I was almost there, but somehow, some way, Jackson Dart found a way to get it done. And the big reason was Quinshawn Jenkins, 34 attempts, 205, and a touchdown on his birthday. So, he probably one of his best colleges games he's going to remember of his career. And what better way to do it in Texas A&M and a big win to stay afloat in the SEC and possible college football playoff as well. So this team, has 3 more games remaining on the schedule. And if they can get all those wins, then you might be looking at a team that could sneak their way in to a playoff appearance late.
All right, Kansas State takes a 10-spot jump after just blowing the doors off Oklahoma State. Uh, I picked Oklahoma State to win that game, so it's a little
Yeah.
embarrassing. It was 48-0, but I think it just shows how good this Kansas State team can be when they're at their best and when they have a healthy quarterback. Because they showed even with backup Will Howard, this offense doesn't miss a beat. I mean, they got a dominant running back in Deuce Vaughn. Howard threw for 4 touchdowns, and the defense obviously had a great performance shutting out Oklahoma State. So I think now you got to give them a slight edge at home over Texas. And if they can get that win, then they have a really good shot to get to the Big 12 championship.
Starting our top 10, we got USC, and I couldn't move them up or down just because, they got the win on the road, but it was closer than a lot of people thought it would be. But to their defense, they didn't have their top 2 wide receivers. And either way, Caleb Williams came out and balled out over 400 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, and 621 total yards on offense. So if you were looking for a reason to hate USC this week and, think that the offense, can't do anything, well, they proved you wrong. And they should do it again against California this week. They're a very bad team. And, expect USC, with that close loss to Utah. And if they win that game, they could be in the conversation as well for a possible, top 4 playoff ranking. But for now, we got to put them here until we can see them play a really good team again and prove how good they are.
All right, number 9, we got UCLA. I think it's a team a lot of people are writing off after that loss to Oregon, but people forget they really dominated Utah, and that was a really big win for them. They still have USC on the schedule at home, so they have really everything in front of them, even to get to the playoff. If they can win that game, and then win the Pac-12 championship, I think it'd be really hard to keep them out at 12-1. So everything is still in front of them. I think they control their own destiny. The offense is still clicking. It's just whether the defense can show up in big games. We saw them really get dominated by Oregon. So can they show up against a USC or a Utah if they match up again?
At 8, we have Oregon, and they beat California pretty handily last week. And, the big storyline, obviously, completely different team after the week 1 blowout to Georgia. And this is a team undefeated in the Pac-12, has a little room to spare depending on if they lose and who they lose to. But this sluggish start in this game kind of didn't look like the same Oregon team. And then they popped off in the second half with almost 600 total yards. Bo Nix struggled early, but, he finished well with 6 total touchdowns. And they go into Colorado, probably bottom 5 team in FBS right now. And they should knock the doors off them early and throughout. So expect Oregon to get to 8-1 and either move up or stay where they're at next week.
All right, also staying where they're at is TCU here at number 7. Not exactly a dominant win over West Virginia, but they get the job done. It's a road game, and they just keep on winning. And I think this team, if they can get through a couple of these tough games coming up, I think they're going to have an argument to get into that top 4 in the college football playoff rankings. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be rooting against TCU as the season goes on, because they just continue to win. And if they continue to do so, then I think they control their own destiny for a playoff spot.
Then at 6, unfortunately, I have to talk about Alabama. We are some big Alabama stands here on this show just because they're so good every year. To their credit, they're playing their 3rd-ranked team in a row out of a bye. And if they get this win here in the Bayou, it just seems like, oh, Alabama's somehow, some way going to get back in this playoff race and more than likely get in the playoff. And, the thing that it comes down to is they lost by 3 points to Tennessee with 0 seconds left on the clock. They, couldn't do anything, couldn't match it, whatever. Alabama missed their field goal. Could have been an overtime game for all we know, and they win. So if the committee's looking at that and the recent SEC bias that we've seen, don't be surprised if they, put them even in the playoff or at least in, the first 6 here as we have them. So get the win next week in LSU, then you might be looking at a top 5 team as well.
All right, number 5, Clemson stays put coming off their bye. Still some quarterback questions, though, surrounding this team. DJ is going to get the start. Dabo said he said he's still the starter going forward, but obviously he was pulled in their last matchup with Syracuse. So how long is the leash with him, especially going into a hostile environment, playing at Notre Dame this week? Clemson's only favored by, I think, 3.5 the last I saw. So expect this to be a tight game. And, you never know what you're going to get out of Notre Dame this year. But if you get one of their performances that they put up against Ohio State or Syracuse last week, then Clemson's going to be in some trouble.
And starting off at 4 in our playoff rankings here, we do have Volunteers. I'm not moving them up just yet, just because, well, they got at Georgia this week, and probably the biggest game of the year, possibly just for ranking standpoint. And I think they can pull off, another big upset. And they completely dominated Kentucky. We thought this one, all right, Will Levis plays a good game. We might see another, close Alabama-Tennessee matchup, and it was not even close to that. Jalen Hyatt, obviously, he could possibly be a contender for a Heisman as well. He's having almost as good, or some cases better numbers than Devonta Smith had when he won his Heisman. And obviously, Hendon Hooker has just been the guy that is leading this team to the promised land. Last year, it was Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker competing for this spot. And here, a year removed from that, you got Hendon Hooker leading the Heisman race, and just shows you how good Josh Heupel is of a coach and how much Hooker has evolved over that year. So if Tennessee is to have a magical year and get back to the old times, this is going to be the week that we're really going to see if it's going to come true.
All right, number 3, Michigan staying put. Just a methodical beatdown of their rival, but too many field goals in my opinion. They kicked 5 in this game. Shout out to Jake Moody though. That's the best kicker in the country, going 5 for 5. But too many times they're settling for field goals in the red zone, not only in this game, but in past games as well. But, the defense gets it done, holding Michigan State to, it was like -1 yards in the entire third quarter. So the defense is making great second half adjustments, and I think that's big going forward. But Michigan's got 2 easy games in the next 2 weeks, Rutgers and Nebraska. And then they finish with Illinois and Ohio State. So obviously that's a really tough finish. If they can get to 11-0 going into that Ohio State game, obviously that game is going to mean everything to both of those teams. So that's something to look forward to.
And at 2, we have the Georgia Bulldogs, and they got number 4 Tennessee at home. And if you want to talk about last week's matchup, though, they almost let Florida back in that one and made it a game down the stretch, but they put them away after it was 28-20 in the third quarter. 2 touchdowns from Georgia, and that pretty much sealed it. Brock Bowers obviously has been looking like a possibly first-round pick. Stetson Bennett, he's been playing well. As he's been just doing his normal thing, but the 2 interceptions cost them kind of in the period where they were coming back. But Georgia, I mean, how do you not talk about Georgia at number 2? It just seems like it's a lock right now. And the way they've played, I mean, obviously that Oregon win at the beginning of the year is just going to look super good on that resume, as they already have a good resume. But you get this win in Tennessee, and there's no doubt in my mind that we might be having a new number 1 next week just because of that. So if that happens, don't be too surprised if these Bulldogs are at number 1 next week.
And at number 1 right now, we have Ohio State getting a big road win at Penn State, where it looks like they might be in trouble even in the fourth quarter, but it's still a double-digit road win and a really tough place to play. So that's why we're keeping them here at number 1. The defense forced 4 turnovers, which really was the difference. CJ Stroud, another really good performance. I think if there's any knock on them, it's can they run the ball and can they stop the run? It's the line of scrimmage, really. They've ran the ball really well against teams with weak secondaries who have had to drop 7 and 8 guys, but they struggled a little bit this week against Penn State, and they struggled to stop the run as well at times. So that's something obviously that's going to be a question mark going into the Michigan game, a team that stops the run really well and runs the ball really well. So if they can get that cleaned up, I think they're the best team in the country, but right now there's plenty of other teams that have an argument.
And that's going to be it for our video today. Make sure you guys come back next week to see our college football playoff rankings, see where the teams are after a big week. And don't forget to subscribe as well. But until next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.